Welcome everyone to the NEEM Foundation podcast. Today we'll be discussing the importance of equity, both on International Women's Day and beyond. The theme for the IWD 2023 is #EmbraceEquity, and we'll be exploring why it's not just a nice to have, but really a must have in every society. We will also delve into the difference between equity and equality, and how we can take equitable action towards true inclusion and belonging for all people, regardless of their starting point. I'm your host with the most, Adedoyin, and joining us today are four, not one, not two, but four esteemed guests who are really passionate about promoting equity in their respective fields. I'll go around the table now with the introduction, starting from my right.
Hello, everyone. My name is Safia A. Mohammed. I am the head of IT and admin at NEEM Foundation.
Welcome, Saf.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nancy Oyibo. I head the legal department at NEEM Foundation. And happy International Women's Day to all our beautiful listeners.
Yes, so, and next.
Hi, listeners. Benga here. I work as a communications officer here at NEEM Foundation. Really excited to be here this afternoon.
Or whenever you're listening. And
hi guys, my name is Tavishma. I am the M&E officer for NEEM Foundation. I am so excited to be with you guys.
So as you can see, it's a packed studio today. We have two guys and two ladies who will be talking about this topic. As we know, International Women's Day is a highly celebrated day across the world, and NEEM Foundation is not left out. But let's talk about this topic, embrace equity. So we talk about equity, equality, all this tea, and we just need to get to the root of the matter. I'll start with the ladies, of course. Nancy. So we hear about equity and equality, and what's the difference really? Okay, Saf, you want to take that? Okay.
Okay, so the first time I came across the difference between equity and equality was a meme that I could actually relate to. I am short, right? And basically, so let's take NEEM Foundation for an example. We have cupboards at the top, right? Mm-hmm. And tea, refreshments, everything is provided for us inside the cupboard. Mm-hmm. Being short, I can't reach that cupboard. Yeah. So the refreshments are there for everyone. Mm-hmm. But because I am short, I cannot get to the cupboard. So NEEM can actually provide me with a stepladder or a stool that I can use to reach the cupboard. Yeah. And to me, that's equity. That's the difference between equity and equality.
Absolutely. I really agree with that definition there. I think it's equity just puts into account different uniqueness and factors that in, like she rightly said, the cupboard was open to everyone, which is equality, but also considering our different uniqueness and making sure that even though we have a level playing ground, we want to consider what is considered level, really. Guys, do you want to chip in? Benga.
I think Sav aptly captures what equity is. And for just to add more light to what she just said, I think bringing it to the context of gender discussions, there are certain peculiarities that certain characteristics that are peculiar to male and female, which either serves as a social or economic advantage or disadvantage, as the case may be. And putting these things into consideration determines if there's actually equity, whether in the workplace, in business, in politics, or whatever the case may be. So equity compared with equality is more about everybody getting what they deserve, while putting into consideration their limitations and advantages. Yeah, basically.
Really spot on, Benga. Nancy, so why is it really so important in our society that we have equity? Because, at one stage, people were clamoring for gender equality. Now we are hearing about gender equity. Based off of this consideration, why would you say it's really important for our society?
Thank you, Adedoyin, for that question. For me, the key word here is balance. Equity helps us balance justice and fairness within society. Now, we're looking at equity as essentially to create a balanced society. There are certain things that we need to put in place for the society to thrive, and for every member of society, citizens of society, to feel like they're part of it. So for me, the major focus for equity, and the major reason why I believe most developing countries are screaming equity, is the fact that we need to be able to balance that playing field and be able to get from resources. So if you're trying to balance it, so we're looking at it from the political aspect. What are we doing in the political sphere? Like, what is the male to female ratio? Is there a balance within there? If you look at it economically, is there a balance within it? So how does this hinder our progress within society? And some of these key questions are what are being asked by political philosophers out there, and yes, the key word, like I said, is balance. So trying to balance it.
I totally agree with you, and considering that we are really in a political season, it's really nice to see how this plays, especially in Nigeria. We tend to always have a perspective which is usually patriarchal, mostly patriarchal, but we see that where we have a balanced perspective where everyone is able to pitch in and contribute, especially at the decision-making phase. Most projects, most countries, most societies tend to flourish more. And I really, really agree with you. Saf, before I get to the guys, this year's theme is on embrace equity. What does this mean to you?
Embracing equity to me means ensuring everyone has the same opportunities regardless of their background or circumstances, and that everyone has an equal chance to succeed and thrive.
Absolutely. I like that response. Equal opportunity to thrive. Also, this call is really for our society, for our people, because this is still something that is heavily debated, especially in the social sphere, on where do we draw the line. And some people would say, so how do we ensure equity? How do we ensure that what they are asking for, the starting point that certain groups are asking for is actually a tenable starting point? Teve, let me come to you. What steps do you think we can, sort of take to promote equity, not just this International Women's Day, but throughout the year?
Okay, I love the context that Saf gave, with the cupboard description, and she described herself as a short person, and she could not reach the cupboard, but there was an opportunity for everybody to have access to that, but she couldn't reach it, so she needed like a step. But another way of putting it is, why don't you bring down the height of maybe you should bring down the height of considering the height of every other person in the office. So you can as well bring down the height so that everybody in the office can actually have access to that opportunity that has been given to everybody in the office. So I feel, well, we're coming from different background, where different culture, religion, so you need to put that into context and try to make equal opportunities considering the different context where we're all coming from. So that's my take.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Considering, let me just put this out there. So, Tama just walked into the studio and we roped him into this conversation. But I really like your answer there. I think, like Nancy really said, it's about balance and being intentional about some of the decisions we make. And usually the decisions we make are based off of our experiences. If I'm not able to experience certain uniqueness, I won't know to make a decision that considers that uniqueness. So if I'm the only one making all the decisions, some people would definitely be disenfranchised. I'm a very tall person, so if we're going to use Sophia's Sophia, no
It's fine.
Well, we're going to use Sophia's analogy. All the cupboards will be way high up, So I think this is where we have to be really intentional about how we consider, how we make decisions, and it starts with embracing equity. Nancy, you want to chip in?
Yes, so what we can do to sort of, beyond International Women's Day, what we can sort of do to try to make equities to still be at the back of the minds of most people, it's by continuous education.
Yeah.
I believe that most of the times, in today's society, you still see that there are people that still make mistakes between equity and equality. So already this is 2023 and we still have that issue. So I think it's important for us to continuously educate, get advocates that stand for equity, and advocates that can help with updating certain policies that are already existing. So advocates that can update certain policies, systems that are already in place, things that have been put by some laws have been set for over 100 years, and to be honest, in 2022, some of those laws don't still apply in today's society. So we need to create room for greater flexibility within, from the judiciary to the way different laws are passed. Things that are not favorable to women, we need to make sure we constantly educate people about it and find ways to build, just that, again, balance within society. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Looking at it from a Nigerian perspective and by extension an African perspective, you would all agree with me that the African woman is a strong woman. And that's why perhaps some of the limitations women in Africa face are downplayed, because it's assumed women are strong. Yeah, granted they are, but we can't shy away from the limitations. I think one of the most impressive things in Nigeria that in recent times stands out is the inclusion of women in the armed forces from the officer cadre. I think there was a time when it was practically impossible for women to get in, and now we see women actually excelling, fighting, flying fighter jets, and leading battles and all of that. So that shows that if there is a level playing field that recognizes the limitations and tries to support them in this regard, women can actually do a lot more than they are currently doing a lot. And also to add to that, for instance, if you look at the current elections that just happened in Nigeria, you realize that women weren't represented as much as they should have been. But you also have to take into cognizance the fact that there are laws that have been enacted which was to support or encourage women. But the question is it that more needs to be done in terms of policy, or is it that women are not taking advantage of the existing structures? So those are the kind of questions we need to look at. So just like Nancy said, there is need for more education. Is it in terms of the opportunities available? Is it in terms of the disadvantages being faced? Is it in terms of policy advocacy to push certain narratives and discussions? So those are the things I feel we should also look at, and I think that's what we're doing here.
Yeah. You did mention before, and I think this is something that I'd like you to shed more light on the cost of politics from a woman's perspective, and how some parties have reduced the cost. Yeah, you were saying something about that.
So just like I just said, sometimes there are opportunities that abound that maybe women are not taking advantage of because of lack of access to information, maybe because of societal prejudices or whatever. The past election, this recently concluded presidential elections and National Assembly, some parties made, provision for women to purchase forms at lower rates, right? And this meant that women had more access. But the ironic thing is that the numbers really aren't that different from 2019, right? So the opportunities abound. Ireti Kingibe won senatorial in FCT, which is unprecedented considering different factors. So that shows that there is room. There's room for possibilities. So the question is, are we leveraging on them?
And just following up on what Benka said, what he just stated now, I'm a woman and I actually did not know about that. I didn't know that they actually had reduced the cost of purchasing forms for the election and some of all these things that you mentioned. So I think which is why it's very important for there to be more emphasis, more focus on, educating voters, educating women, educating females out there. I think it's very important. And this should start at the grassroots. So we need to go back to the grassroots and start. So if we're able to achieve that, then I feel in the next 10, 15 years, I think we will see greater participation in politics, and we'll see women in key positions that I guess they thought they didn't have access to in the past.
I really hope that in my lifetime I get to see a female Nigerian president. I really, really hope that. Yeah, Tabe, you want to say something?
Nancy mentioned something about education, and I would like to give you an example, or maybe from my experience in the development sector. And you see, we talked about equality and equity, and in the wash sector, I worked in the wash sector for a while.
For the sake of those who don't know, what is WASH?
Water, sanitation, and hygiene sector. So, when a school is being provided with a sanitation facility, when a school is being provided with sanitation facility, there's a boys' sanitation facility and there's a girls' sanitation facility, and you can see now both of them, equal opportunity has been given to both gender. So the boys have their toilet and the girls have their toilet. Now there was an issue. A study or a research was done, and it was discovered that girls usually miss coming to school when they are on their period. So what was the problem? They just feel there was a kind of how would I put it, shame or so. And so now the wash sector had to come up with a policy, after the research was to discover what the problem was and to address the problem. And we discovered that the girls did not have a place where they can just hide themselves and change their pads. So now they had to provide that kind of room, a special room where you can change your pad and dispose of it. So girls felt excited. They felt they had this kind of privacy. So that was more of I'll describe that as equity.
Yes.
So they had to go an extra mile to provide that comfort for girls. And we discovered that girls, the attendance in school actually rose up because of that that particular
that addition,
initiative. Thank you.
That initiative, and it just supports what I said earlier, that if you bring in diverse opinion and diverse initiative in the initial decision-making phase, you're able to make better policies. Because I believe that if certain people were in the decision-making phase of that particular project, maybe that would have been put into context from the beginning. So we definitely make better decisions when equity is upheld in the society. let me come back to Safia. So we've talked a lot about embracing equity, the difference between equity and equality. So how can we ensure that equality is woven into the fabric of our society? And we are not just paying lip service to the idea without thinking meaningfully.
Okay, so seeing as everyone is talking about education, let me chip in. So since I was in my teen years, I've always had like a passion for tech. I know you know me well enough.
Yes.
So if you had met 16-year-old me and you had asked her, what do you want to do when you grow up, what would I have said?
To build a robot that will take over the world.
Yes, exactly. So when I went to university, of course, I was excited that, I was going to dive right into tech and robotics and building. And, okay, so a little bit of background story. The university I went to is segregated. So the boys are separate from the girls. Like, we don't see each other. Only on rare occasions. And so our classes are completely different. So there was a robotics course. I could take it, but all the hands-on and building and the robots and the mechanical stuff, it was just the boys that got to do that. The girls were just, doing robotics in theory. And it was so sad. I actually didn't end up taking the course.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I went to something
you would have been
else.
the Elon Musk of Nigeria. Imagine that this is just one decision that changed the entire...
Yeah, like, I didn't see the point, like, because the way I even found out was that the boys' team won... I think it was a race. They actually built the car from scratch, and I was like, wait, because I knew somebody that was in the class, and I was like, where's yours? And she was like, oh no, we don't do that. And it's sad because I think it's sort of expected in their society that women just go to school just for the sake of having a degree and not actually using the degree. Which is sad, and I really hope that they've changed all of that. I mean, that was years ago, but I think it's really important that we take these things into consideration. It's not fair, right, that boys get to experience certain things just because they are the caregivers, they are the breadwinners. They bring money to the table. I think that...
But I think that is even changing now, because you see a lot more women being the breadwinners who are in high-paying jobs, and
yes,
so that is
agree.
really changing now.
Yes, it is changing, but there are still some societies that actually, it's still difficult for them to accept that, basically. Ultimately, I believe that it's up to us, it's up to everyone, it's up to all members of the society to address these issues and to prioritize equity, and we need to take action.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, this is a really touching story, because, I mean, those who know Saf know that she is really, really intelligent. I just imagine what you would be doing now if you had access to that. But I think it's a learning curve for us as the next generation of people who will be making this decision. We are gradually growing to that point where the next generation will be looking at us for guidance and for mentorship and the rest. And I think having this woven into our society, into the fabric of our society, would help us make better decisions. Women in tech, not just tech, the whole STEM framework. Even women not necessarily even in the education system. I mean, in the vocational field, we see a lot more consideration given to men. And even the consideration given to women is coming from a man's perspective of what they feel a woman wants or if a woman needs. So you tend to see more women pushed into makeup and bakery and cooking. And even when you see men in those fields, it now looks like as if the man is not even a man, you know. So that's divide in our society. I think we need to look more inwardly. Like Nancy said earlier, there are some ideologies and some laws that are really, really outdated. And it's not that we want to throw away tradition, but someone said that tradition is just peer pressure from our ancestors, you know. So it's not like we're just discarding tradition, because these are some of the things that have built us up. But we really need to go back and audit some of these things and say, are these things still tenable in this day and age? You know, day and age where women are providing for entire families, right? So what are you holding there? Binga, let me come to you here. So in the context of promoting equity, can you speak on some of the current gaps in Nigeria and what's hindering the process towards true inclusion and belonging for all people?
So just as it is with many challenges in the developing world, one thing I notice, especially when it comes to policy formulation and implementation, is that many of the policies we import don't really address the local issues. So it doesn't take into consideration the unique peculiarities of our culture. You know, while we may want to downplay or, you know, cast aspersions on our cultural heritage and all of that, it's going to always stay. So why don't we look at it and see how we can harmonize what needs to be harmonized and implement what needs to be implemented. One thing I also want to point out is that from my experience work with women here at NIM Foundation, I've worked with women in the past and in different education. If there's anything I've always observed, is that women always do the most. Women always have a perspective that is different from men. So women always are able to identify the loopholes, the gaps, and men are just, we are unique in our own way. And
I really love to hear Nancy's response to
and
this.
this brings to mind the fact, for instance, why Nigeria is still struggling with development. I feel it's because there's no proper representation of women in decision making, in implementation of policies. Because there is, especially in recent times, there are certain policies that you could tell this is coming from a man. Why? Because it doesn't factor the suffering of the masses, right? So what can be done? Number one, I think we should review our policies, our laws. Many of the laws that seek to address gender equality were created by men without due consultation and involvement from women. So it's like forcing a child to wear a dress that the child doesn't like or is uncomfortable or makes the child feel hot because you feel it will make the child look beautiful, right? So cosmetic approach to issues is really affecting the effectiveness of the solution. So that's the first one. The second one is to bring women on board in governance, in politics, in education, in every sector of the economy. And also, we should stop trying to paint gender equity, gender equality issues like a charitable cause. It's not. It's a right, right? Because women are not some people we are trying to help. If anything, women are the ones to help us. Because obviously, like in Nigeria, we need help.
Yes.
so
we've not done a good work so far.
So I feel if we can start from there, I think we can then continue the conversation on what else needs to be done. The fundamentals matter.
I like that. I like Nancy.
So I'm really just going to talk about this question from looking at women in armed forces.
Okay.
Now, if I could ask everyone in this room, how many top-ranking female officials do you know? Can you list up to 10?
I do.
Exactly. So the only Sophia, you
No,
can.
no.
So you see, like, female representation in the armed forces, it's only 1%, like in top-ranking positions. Now, if you look at the existing Police Act and the police regulation, you would see that the way the Act itself is structured, you find that I don't even think they don't really consider women as equal to men. Again, just throwing it out there, how many female police officers have you seen carrying arms or carrying like any weapons? Have you seen any?
Maybe ceremonial.
That's actually true. That's
Exactly,
something
you
I've
don't
never
see it.
thought of.
So for women, females actually have to seek for permission to actually carry this, and sometimes they're not just granted. So it's not easy for them. Even they have to seek for permission as well to also get married within the police force. Do you know that? You can't. So a lot of these things sort of hinders, it hinders their growth within the, for them to be able to rise up to their male counterpart as well.
Yeah, it even makes the force less appealing.
Exactly, to
women.
females,
Yeah.
exactly. So the main issue, the problem is deeper than what we sort of are just, I guess, discussing today in this room. There's a deeper problem that we actually need to address. And yes, we can propose most of this is education, making sure that people understand what the difference between equity and equality, how are we really implementing some of these things already in place? What are we really doing to make a difference? And to be honest, it starts, I guess, with us. As Sav had said, it starts with us. But then beyond that, I feel we need to make active moves on our own part to stand against some of these, already existing laws, things that put us at a significant disadvantage. So we need to be more, I guess, bold. For me, this 2023, my motto is bigger, bolder, and better.
Ooh.
So it's just moving.
Right, let's go.
Yes. So that's
And
my
that's
motto.
on what?
I think we should make bigger and bolder moves, yeah. So
Absolutely, I agree with you. Bigger, bolder moves. I think, just to bring this home, we already have laws that have been handed over to us, and these laws are not perfect, right? Because they were not as good intentioned as they were. They were not holistic in certain contexts. So I think that all hope isn't lost, because we, like I said earlier, we are getting to that stage where we are able to influence policies, even laws to certain extents, and we believe that a time would come. I mean, not just even in the future. I think from now, being able to, even in our small areas of authority and offices, we can begin to fight for this. These rights, like Benga said, they are not luxuries, they are not things that you hand to people, they are rights. They are things that we should be born with. And we begin to make these changes as we evolve in Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the NIM Foundation podcast. I'm sure you've learned a lot. I'm in the studio with Sophia, Nancy, Benga, and Tavashima. As we round off, final messages. We've taken quite a lot of time today, but the discussion was really interesting. So as we round off today, what are some of your final thoughts, or what would you like to share with our listeners on this International Women's Day, on how we can work together to fully embrace equity and create a more just society for all? I'll start with Sophia.
Okay, so on this International Women's Day, we must recognize the importance of equity in creating a just society. We need to work together to ensure that everyone, regardless of their gender, their tribe, religion, race, or any other factor, has access to the same opportunities and resources. We need to advocate for these policies and systems we've been talking about, and even more, just so that we can promote fairness and equality. I feel like we also need to listen to and amplify the voices of our brothers and our sisters that cannot speak up.
Yeah.
I feel like that's very important. But all in all, by fully embracing equity, we can create a world that is more just and equitable for all.
Absolutely. I like what you said, that we can amplify the voices of our brothers and sisters who can't speak for themselves, because that in itself is also equity. Because you can say, well, I mean, there's freedom of speech, everybody can speak up, but there are some people who, due to certain uniqueness or challenges, cannot speak for themselves. So in being able to speak for others, you're actually promoting equity. Thank you for that, Safia. Nancy?
Thank you for that, Noyi and Safia. I completely agree with everything Safia said. Just to add to that, there is a need for us to build a coalition of women that are advocates for equity. We need more people to take up these roles. We need more people to highlight the challenges that that we are facing. You know, I know today we focus heavily on women, and that wasn't really done intentionally. But you know, just basically highlight the issues that every single person goes through. Men, women, boys, girls. I think it's important for us to build that coalition, and then collaboration, better collaboration. You know, there are a lot of development agencies, there are a lot of countries that are willing to collaborate on things like this. I know that there are quite a few ongoing debates in different parliaments, in different state houses on how to involve people more, how to socially include more diversity. So these are some of the key things that people talk about. So I think it's very important for us to, build that network, to be able to build on already things that people have already done in the past. So build on them and try as much as possible to create a just and fair society. So
absolutely. So we work together to build on what we currently have, to improve and promote Nigeria to where we want. Binga.
On a final note, I am somebody that has always held the opinion that Nigeria will get better when more women are involved in governance. And when I say Nigeria, this trickles down to our families, families, local governments, state governments, and even to the top. But for us to get here or to get there, there is an urgent need to strengthen institutions, create policies where lacking, and evaluate current and existing ones to see where the gaps lie. And just like Nancy Saf rightly said, there is a need to invest more in educating the girl child to know what their rights are, what the opportunities available to them are, and how to bridge the gap where gaps exist. In closing, I'll just point out something. In 2015, for instance, there were, I think, 7 elected senators. Opportunities that were abound as at then were fewer. And now in 2023, we have maybe 2 or 3 elected senators. So, I mean, it raises a question.
That are female.
That are females. Yeah. So it raises a question of, is there more being done? Should more be done? Where is there the need to do more? And I think this extends even into further conversations. Thank you.
Absolutely. Tabe, last words.
Okay, so finally, I think I would advise us to remove the barriers that actually create some of this. So I would advise us to remove the barriers that create some of this equity challenges. So it's like I saw this illustration where there was a fence, and so you had the tall guy that could see over the fence, but the other 2 people were not tall, and they needed a platform to just stand on them to be able to see over the fence. Why not remove the fence or put something that everybody can just stand and just see through? So I think we should remove some of these barriers that actually create these equity issues. So
I agree with you. I think that analogy really ties in what we've been talking about. For those who don't know about this analogy, I'll just paint it for you. So there's a football match and 3 people were watching over a fence. So there's a really tall person and 2 other shorter people. And they put that as the depiction of the current world that we live in. And then there was another picture of all 3 of them standing on the same size of stool. Let me use a box of the same size. So even though they were all given equal opportunities to see the field better, all of them could see the field better, that was considered as equality. But when the fence was totally removed and everyone was able to stand on the ground, irrespective of their height or whatever, they were able to see the football match. That is considered equity. So we need to remove every barrier. Sometimes equality is not even the answer, because equality, yes, it provides a level playing ground for everyone, but it does not consider our different uniqueness or our starting point, or like Benga said, our limitations. So equity considers all of that, and it gives us a better opportunity for us to make a better Nigeria. And that's all for today, our dear listeners. I want to thank all our special guests for sharing their insights with us, and to our listeners for tuning in. Remember, equity is not just a buzzword. It's a necessary component for a fair and just society. Let's continue to have this discussion and take action towards creating a more equitable world. Until next time, let's work together to fully #embrace equity. Thank you very much. My name is Ali Doyin, Senior Communications Officer here at NIM Foundation. Till next time.